Have you ever witnessed a moment when deep-seated prejudice blinds someone so completely that they fail to see the truth staring them in the face? This is one of those stories. A dramatic encounter where a racist mindset collides with an unexpected revelation, turning the tables in an instant. It was a humid Tuesday evening in the city of Crestwood, located close to Chicago, Illinois. Officer James O'Connor, a veteran of the Crestwood Police Department, known as much for his aggressive style as for his outdated biases, was on routine patrol along Maple Avenue. As he cruised slowly in his squad car, his eyes scanned every vehicle, every movement. In his view, a black sedan, even one moving perfectly within the speed limit, was an automatic red flag. Without much thought beyond his prejudice, Officer O'Connor activated his siren and pulled the sedan over to the side of the road. Moments later, he approached the driver's side window. Sitting behind the wheel was a composed black man dressed in a dark suit, exuding quiet authority despite the casual setting. This was something that made James even more annoyed. He fed off the fear that people had when he pulled them over. But this man was different. He met the officer's gaze with calm resolve. "Good evening, officer," the man said simply. "Evening," Officer O'Connor replied in a curt tone, barely concealing the disdain in his eyes. "License and registration, please." His voice carried an unmistakable edge, one that made it clear he wasn't here just to perform a routine check. The man who introduced himself as Darius Washington, through the calm cadence of his voice, reached into his glove compartment and slid forward his documents. "Here you go, officer," he said, maintaining a respectful tone despite the tension building between them. Officer O'Connor took the papers and studied them with a scrutinizing glare. "What brings you out on Maple Avenue tonight?" he demanded, his tone sharp. "I'm not just making small talk, you know. I have a feeling that you might be up to no good in our small town." Darius's eyes remained steady. He was surprised by the instant aggression displayed by the officer. "I'm returning home after a long day at work. I've been careful to obey every traffic law along the way. So I do think that you don't have anything to worry about, officer." But the officer wasn't listening to the words. His mind was fixed on his own prejudices. He saw a black man in a nice car and instantly thought that he must be doing something illegal to afford it. "You expect me to believe that?" he spat, leaning closer. "People like you always seem to be around when trouble stirs. Don't think I'm buying your story." A hush fell over the quiet street as a few passing motorists slowed to see what was unfolding. Darius, undeterred by the growing hostility, replied calmly, "Officer, I assure you, I have done nothing wrong. I would appreciate being treated with the same respect I extend to you." "You think respect is a given?" Officer O'Connor raised his voice a bit. "I've been serving this community for over 20 years, and I've seen your kind use every excuse in the book to skirt the rules." The confrontation grew more heated with each passing moment. Darius's voice remained even, his words deliberate. "Sir, your insinuations are not only uncalled for, they are a violation of the principles we, as officers, are meant to uphold." His eyes locked with O'Connor's, challenging him to meet the truth. At that moment, the simmering tension reached its peak. Officer O'Connor's face twisted in a mix of anger and disbelief as Darius leaned forward just enough for his next words to be heard clearly. "Officer, before you continue with your baseless accusations, allow me to clarify something important. I am not just any civilian. I am the head of internal affairs for the Crestwood Police Department." There was a long, breathless pause. The white officer's expression went from hostility to stunned silence. "What did you say?" he managed, his voice faltering, as he tried to reconcile the revelation with the scene he had just created. The officer was thinking that it couldn't be true, but some part of him knew that this was just karma. It was something that should have happened a long time ago. So he asked again. "I really didn't get it the first time. So what did you say?" he said while acting polite all of a sudden. "Head of Internal Affairs," Darius repeated slowly, his tone calm but resolute. "I oversee investigations into misconduct within this department, including, I'm afraid, your conduct tonight." A murmur rippled through the small crowd of onlookers who had gathered around the scene. Officer O'Connor's bravado melted into palpable fear and humiliation. I didn't know," he stuttered, his earlier aggression now replaced with uncertainty. You You can't be serious. Absolutely serious, Darius replied, his voice steady. I serve to ensure that every member of this department and every citizen we encounter is treated fairly and without prejudice. I expected better from an officer who swore to protect and serve. For a moment, the only sound was the soft hum of distant traffic as Officer O'Connor searched Darius's face for any sign of error. Instead, he found only unwavering authority. So, what now? He demanded, the words heavy with defeat and lingering resentment. Now I document this encounter, Darius said firmly, and trust me, the record will show that today, your actions did not live up to the standards we expect from those entrusted with enforcing the law. I advise you to reflect deeply on the bias that led you here. The silence that followed was oppressive. A couple of bystanders, who had initially approached out of curiosity, exchanged looks of relief and vindication. Officer O'Connor's posture slumped, the weight of his own prejudice and the consequences of his actions finally settling in. I never meant to, he began, but his words were cut short by Darius's steady interjection. Intent does not erase impact, Officer O'Connor, Darius said, and it certainly does not excuse behavior that is discriminatory and unprofessional. Before the officer could respond further, Darius turned and walked back to his sedan, leaving behind a scene charged with raw emotion and unspoken lessons. The sound of his car door closing punctuated the moment, a final note in an encounter that would not soon be forgotten. Especially since some of the people who witnessed this disgusting behavior from Officer James decided to film the whole interaction, making him go viral. You know what you shouldn't be forgetting? Hitting that like button and subscribing to our channel. We appreciate your support. Now let's see what will happen to this racist cop. In the days that followed, the fallout from that turbulent evening rippled through the Crestwood Police Department. An internal review was promptly launched, and Officer O'Connor's actions were scrutinized under the very standards he had so carelessly flouted. The story of that fateful encounter quickly became the subject of heated discussion, not just among officers, but throughout the community. At a departmental meeting later that week, Darius addressed the assembled officers with quiet authority. Today, we witness behavior that undermines the integrity of our institution, he said, his voice carrying across the room. It is a stark reminder that prejudice has no place in law enforcement. I expect each of you to treat every citizen and every fellow officer with the respect and fairness that our oath demands. The room was silent, every officer acutely aware of the message behind his words. Among them, Officer O'Connor sat, his earlier defiance replaced with a heavy remorse. His internal struggle was evident in the downcast eyes and the tense silence that followed Darius's address. In that moment, the truth was undeniable. Systems built on justice and equality would not tolerate the corrosive effects of racism, no matter how long someone had worn the uniform. And though the path forward was fraught with the challenges of reform, the incident on Maple Avenue served as a catalyst for change, a reminder that no one is above accountability. What do you think? Should those in positions of power always be held accountable for their actions? Or does change require more than just a single moment of reckoning? Share your thoughts in the comments below.